Next tonight, health-wise, Portugal has gotten off lightly for a European country in this pandemic compared to its neighbours. Only 854 people have died so far, a number the authorities credit to social compliance with lockdown measures. But the country's tourism and export-based economy is taking a serious beating. The IMF forecasts GDP will shrink by 8% this year. For more on this, I'm joined by Ricardo Marinho Felix, the Deputy Finance Minister of Portugal. Thanks very much for speaking with us here on Euronews. We're just hearing there from our correspondent talking about not only this €500 billion size deal, but also the recovery fund. What does your department make of the move so far from the EU?
Well, thank you very much. I think that the outcome of the European Council yesterday is extremely positive. We find that on top of the three instruments already put forward by the Eurogroup under the Recovery Fund, all of them were endorsed. That's a very important result. We have three backstops: a backstop for firms, a backstop for workers, and a backstop for sovereigns, amounting to more than €500 billion. Now, on top of this, all the leaders agreed with the Recovery Fund, and that the Recovery Fund will be tremendously important to kickstart our economies. It will increase the firepower of the multi-annual financial framework. The multi-annual financial framework is based on the objectives of cohesion and convergence to promote our European social model. And we need to maintain the priorities related to the digital transition and to the new Green Deal. And on the top of this, we'll have now the Recovery Fund that will be very important to support our economies, the most affected sectors, namely tourism, but many other sectors, because this is a quite broad-based impact on our economies of this unprecedented crisis. So the fund should contribute to the autonomy of the strategic value chains of Europe and to preserve our social market economy and to provide prosperity for the future of our economies, of our citizens. And that's what European citizens expect from the leaders. So I think that the European Council rise to the situation and is meeting the ambitions and the needs of European citizens. That's a very important result for everybody in Europe.
Now, as we were just saying in the introduction there, Portugal hasn't been hit so badly in terms of infections and deaths compared to other EU nations. So when you look at the Recovery Fund, how much of it do you think Portugal is going to need compared to countries such as Italy and Spain?
Well, the shock is exogenous and is a shock that is symmetric, affected all countries, but the countries were in different starting positions. So that said, it will be important that the fund is large enough to meet the needs of all EU countries, namely Portugal, but also Spain, Italy, and France, and all other countries. Vice President Dombrovskis referred to needs of 1.5 trillion, while the ECB President, Madame Lagarde, referred to 1.6. These numbers are quite close. It's 3 times the backstops we have put in place or decided to put in place as of the 1st of January. It's a substantial amount of firepower, and that's the target that we should have. Portugal will certainly benefit. The debt will be issued by the Commission, and no member state, as far as we know, opposed to that. So the key issue now is the split between grants and loans, and an appropriate split between grants and loans needs to be found, such that the support is for the European economy as a whole, irrespectively of the situation of the member state, without conditionality, without stigma, and this will be terribly important for countries.
Ricardo, just quickly, sorry, I just want to jump in here. When your Prime Minister, his economic strategy was quite different to what the EU wanted. He wanted to spend his way out of austerity. That's something which saw the country able to come out of a deficit last year, but considering the scale of the economic damage that this crisis poses, will you have to change tack here? Are you going to continue spending your way out of austerity, or are you going to have to change it and actually start pulling on those purse strings quickly if possible?
Well, austerity means doing a restrictive fiscal policy in times of crisis, and that's definitely what we've learned in the last crisis that we should not do. That's the reason why the Portuguese position in this crisis has always been that we need to provide support to our firms, to our citizens, such that this generation rises to the crisis, provides enough support and be remembered in history not by the crisis itself, but by the appropriate and sizable response that we're able to provide in order to turn fragilities into an opportunity to create a better Europe. I think that we have the opportunity, if we give the right response, that is to support economies and to have this recovery fund in order to pump liquidity and support convergence and cohesion, avoiding fragmentation, to be remembered in the future as the people of Europe. And I think that's the key message that we need to put forward to provide confidence to our citizens and confidence to our firms, such that we have a prosperous future.
Thank you very much. Ricardo Marinho Felix, the Deputy Finance Minister of Portugal, joining us today. Thank you.